Hi everybody, how you doing? Was that a good?
Yes.
All right. So welcome. This is half a private event that I've invited people who have been my current customers, my previous customers, people who are part of my inner circle to. And I've also opened it up last minute. I decided to folks from the Bay Area Entrepreneur and Small Business MeetUp, because I have spoken many times about the inner work that I've done to reach 6 figures in a year and have not actually had an evening dedicated to talking about the inner game and the inner work that I did. So I realized, people have been asking me to speak on that, and even though this was a private event, I thought I'll just go ahead and open it up to those that are in the MeetUp group, because there's some people who've been knocking on my door asking me to teach about this. So that said, come on in. There are actually chairs. If you have a chair by you, if you can scooch in so that the chairs are actually at the edges of the room, so that people as they walk in late, if you can actually scooch, just so the chairs are at the edges. And as people come in, then they can wonder. I'll take those clipboards up here in the hat. We are going to have a raffle tonight for some really cool stuff. And all right, so let's begin. Many of you may actually think that you are responsible and the cause of all of the problems that you experience in life. I know that in the Bay Area here, we are all very aware beings, and the sentiment of you are 100% responsible and for your life and everything that's happening in your life is based on what's going on inside of you. How many of you have heard that before? Y'all heard that? Yeah. So I'm actually here to tell you that not everything that's happening in your life you are the cause of, you are the direct cause of. That there are such things as family entanglements and childhood imprints, and these things that are set in your subconscious are the culprit of many of your problems, specifically the ones that are the most stuck, the ones that kind of repeat, the ones that are a pattern for you or they've been around for a while. And if you just resolve those family entanglements and childhood imprints, then a whole new world opens up. Things just begin to flow with ease. Those problems that were stuck that you thought were your fault, that you tried to apply elbow grease to, that you tried to take financial classes or relationships classes to learn, or you started going and taking new health courses and doing this fitness stuff, and the weight's still not coming off. All that stuff that you applied yourself to and didn't get results, that is a telltale sign that you're working with a family entanglement or a childhood imprint that's keeping you stuck. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be covering both family entanglements and childhood imprints. And just to give you a quick little dip and background, would it be all right if I told you who I am and what's going on with me, why I teach this stuff? Would that be okay? Thank you. So I run the Bay Area Entrepreneur and Small Business MeetUp, mixed gender and women only, and we've been meeting together as a whole recently. And the reason that I started this, the reason that I got into all of this, let me just back you up a bit. About a decade ago, I contracted Lyme disease, and I didn't know I had it. So I've had it for a decade undiagnosed, which means it hasn't been treated, which means it's gone on a rampage for a decade. And that comes with all kinds of problems like insomnia, chronic fatigue syndrome, dementia. It's actually caused brain damage, literally in my brain. The MRI shows it. And I've been, all around the map looking for answers in the last 10 years in the medical field. I went to all the internal medicine specialists, and they said, no, you're fine, we can't see anything going on in there. So they sent me to get MRI, and my initial 2 MRIs were completely clean. And then they said, we don't know, let's give you a spinal tap. So they gave me a spinal tap. And of course they waited until the last minute to tell me that I might be paralyzed for the rest of my life right before the procedure, which I asked them not to give me a choice like that right before the procedure, but they did that. And I chose to go for it because the life that I was living was practically useless. I was homeless. I was living on a neighbor's futon. I couldn't work. I couldn't support myself. And I thought, oh my God, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be dependent on my parents, even when I'm 60, well, if they're still around, right? But I just thought there's no independence here. And so I went ahead and got a spinal tap, came back clean. They said, we can't figure out what's wrong with you. days of psychological testing. I had 3 days of psychological testing, and I came back and I said, I can't find anything wrong with you. I don't know what it is. It's just in your head. Yeah. Which is what a lot of people who have chronic Lyme have been told. And you're just making it up, or whatever it may be. And so for 10 years, I was going with all these symptoms, and some of the worst symptoms were that I couldn't think, speak, read, or write very well anymore. And that I would be laid out in bed for 3 or 4 days at a time, every week, every other week. And that's a pretty miserable existence. And I've searched, once Western medicine failed me, I went into Eastern medicine and did all the energy stuff and acupuncture and just everything, ran the gamut. I even tried some really trippy, weird stuff where they like shot some energy at a tincture that I had to take every day, and it was really expensive. And I just tried everything, and nothing could get it to budge or move. And eventually, as I was kind of cruising along in there, I became a therapist. I was a therapist for 10 years, and I found out along the way that 90% of what's going on in your life is based on what's in your subconscious mind. Now, this whole time that I was a therapist, I was working pretty much with the conscious mind, right? Like it's talk therapy. You talk about stuff, you think about the perspectives you're coming from, you have new thoughts, you make new choices, conscious mind. And then I found out that 90% of what's going on in your life is based on the subconscious. So I was like, okay, barking up the wrong tree. Started learning subconscious work and discovered childhood imprints and family entanglements. And as I started doing this work on myself, the symptoms started to disappear. I was no longer in bed for 4 days at a time every week. In fact, that doesn't happen at all anymore. I was no longer having the thinking problems, the memory problems that I was having. It resolved so many of the things that nothing else could touch. And then I began to use it for business, which is how, when I started my own business, even with the Lyme, even undiagnosed, and even still struggling with the, and I didn't even go into how I have dyslexia and ADD, and I had PTSD, if you all know what that is. So there was a gamut of alphabet soup of all the things that I was struggling with. And even with that, when I first started my business, the first year that I just dove into it, it took me a month and a half to sell out my private clients, to have just a sold out client coaching practice. And then that year, I hit 6 figures in the first year, even though I traveled for 4 months out of the year. And I don't say that to impress you, but to impress upon you that being able to have, for those of you that have a business and that want to grow your business, you can get there. And you can get there much faster than you think. And my secret was a 2-fold path. How many, please? 2. One more time, twice as loud? 2. Thank you. A 2-fold path. And the 2-fold path was that I worked on the outer game, which is what I teach most of the time here at the Bay Area Entrepreneur Small Business Meetup. It's all like the business skills and tools and basically how to simplify business down to just its core essentials. Whatever's the most important for your specific business, you just replicate those steps in a customized way, and it just flows and grows, and the next thing you know, you're like running to keep up with this, how many customers you have. The other thing that I did at the same time simultaneously was that I worked on my inner game. And I cleared out the blocks around money and business. First I did health, but then money and business blocks with family entanglement work and childhood re-imprinting. So this work has actually completely changed my life from a health perspective, but then after that, in a business perspective, and gave me that sort of freedom lifestyle that I've always wanted of being able to travel a lot, having a business that's mobile, so being able to have the business from anywhere in the world. Now, how many of you here like to travel a lot? Show hands. All right, I'm in good company. That's almost everybody. So what we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to get into what are family entanglements, what are childhood imprints, what are the signs and symptoms, how do you recognize if, which ones you may have. And keep in mind that this is subconscious stuff, which means you're not going to be aware of all of it. Usually another practitioner is going to help you become aware of some of it because it's subconscious, right? So you're not always aware of it, but some of it you are. And you'll be able to notice that when I show you the signs and symptoms of entanglements and imprints. That said, let me see if there's anything else that I want to cover before we dive into that. I think that pretty much covers most of it. So let's start with family entanglement work. Actually, I'm going to start with childhood re-imprinting because I'm going to actually do a miniature session of family entanglement work for all of you tonight. So I want us to end on that so that it's kind of congruent and flows right into the session work. Is that okay? All right. Now, one of the things that I do when I teach is I use accelerated learning. How many of you have heard of accelerated learning before? Fantastic. It's developed by a man named Paul Scheele, and it's designed so that people who are sitting and listening and learning actually retain 10 times as much. What they found out was that if you're participating in the education, you retain it much more. And you have to participate from a auditory level and a kinesthetic level. Visually, I'll be your visual for you. I got stuck with the board, I got stuck with my body, that's visual. However, you can participate auditorily by repeating something that I ask you to repeat, and it'll be something that just helps your mind have a break from listening, because you're going to be speaking. And then because you say the word out loud, it helps it go in a little bit deeper. So I might ask you to repeat. What might I ask you to do? Repeat. Thank you. And then the second thing is to do a repeat with a hand movement or a gesture, because then your body's physically involved. And I've done this, I've taught classes for years where people will come back to me years later and they say, I still remember all the gestures and the hand things from your class, and that's how I remember the data. Because we always did the same hand gestures each time. So for example, I might say something like, money, ceiling. Please say and do that with me. Money, ceiling. Thank you. Awesome. Hot. So these are the things that I'm going to be doing to keep your minds engaged and being able to intake more information. I'm going to give you little brain breaks every so often. So you're all looking up here, you're all learning, and I'm giving energy in this way, you're giving energy this back way. And then I'm going to ask you to turn to each other every so often and just say something to each other. I might ask you to do something really dorky like high five each other. Not because high fives are so cool, but because it makes you have a moment to look at somebody else and connect. And you have that hand thing, so there's kinesthetic, and it's silly and it's playful, and you giggle, and it gives your brain a break, so that when you come back, your brain is ready for the next chunk of information. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so that's why the playfulness when I teach. It actually helps you retain everything much, much more. So let's start with childhood imprints. You don't have materials for childhood imprints printed. That was on the site, I'm pretty sure, and if not, if you sign up to receive an email from me, I will get you both of those articles, Childhood Imprints, Family Entanglements. So childhood imprints start from conception to age 7. This is the part where you can take notes all you want because there's no materials present at the moment for this. I just realized that I have a handheld mic which makes writing on the board a little bit more challenging. So conception to age 7. This is called the imprint period. What's it called, please? Imprint period. Thank you. This is called the imprint period. At this time in your life, your mind does not have critical thinking faculty in order to assess what's going on with your parents or in your surroundings. So that means that when something happens, like when mom hits your hand so you don't touch the hot stove, a child's conception of that might be not, oh, mom is trying to save me from hurting my hand. The child just notices the slap and the panic in mom, and the way that mom yells and says, no, don't touch that. And the child internalizes this, oh my God, I'm bad, right? Think of a child's mind and how a child makes sense of reality. It's very limited, they have barely lived any life, so they're gonna make this sense that comes from a child's perspective, right? So this is one way that childhood imprints develop. I'm gonna start with fetal inference. So I said conception to age 7. So that means from conception and those first 9 months in utero, I want you to think about, what was your mom going through? What's your best guess? Some of you know, some of you have to just kind of have a roundabout guess. What was your mom probably going through in those 9 months when she was pregnant with you? Was there stress? Was there sadness? Was there fear? Was there worry? Was there heartbreak? Was there depression? Was there anger? What was going on with her and the people around her? How were the people around her treating her? How did she feel about that? Think about that for just a moment. Just write a few bullet points down of what you think your mom probably was experiencing for those 9 months while you were inside her. All right. So, hello? Does that change the, or does it not? It's on, but it's not actually taking. So as she checks that, fetal imprints. So what you want to think about is what your mom was going through. Now there's a few different things that happen based on what your mom was going through. Here's an example. One, let's say that your mom was feeling stress and depressed at some point. In fact, this happened to a friend of mine. His mom's dad died while she was pregnant with him. Okay, so she had this huge grief and huge depression because her dad was dying while her son was inside her. Here's one of the things that happens in childhood imprints. When your mom is feeling all of those emotions, it releases endorphins in her body, right? And you're bound by blood, it goes right through into you. So part of the thing that can happen is that you actually feel like you are feeling those feelings. You feel depressed. You feel stressed. And those feelings and emotions get imprinted inside of you in part of your formative years. Okay, this becomes part of your map of reality, and your little, brain and neurology starts to make sense of this as this is how we feel. This is what we feel, this is how we feel. So that's one way that this can happen. A second way that this can happen, it's back on. Fantastic. Okay. A second thing that can happen when you're in utero is that you think that you are the cause of your mom's sadness and stress. And you begin to have imprints around you being the cause of your mom feeling these things. I cause pain. I'm not good enough. I hurt people. So that's those are two ways that that fetal imprints, I stand corrected, that fetal imprints can affect you. Then once you're born, once you pop out all the way to age 7, you want to think about what was going on in your life in that time period. What were the influences around you? Now when you're really young, there's stuff that you won't remember. But there's simple things. There's somebody that I worked with who, once we were doing the work, once you do the work, you can actually go back and remember some of the memories that you normally wouldn't have access to. And he remembered being 1 month old in the crib, screaming for his mom to come feed him. And the panic that went on inside of him when she didn't come right away. And he started getting louder and louder and louder and shrieking. And finally she came, and what he imprinted and internalized is, people aren't there for me. In order to be taken care of, I have to throw a fit. I have to basically have temper tantrums. Now from the perspective of a child, that's temper tantrums. From the perspective of an adult, how many of you have been around an adult who has had an adult temper tantrum, right? And it's not necessarily because consciously they are trying to choose this. This comes from a very deep and far back place, things that are imprinted way long ago, that this is their strategy for trying to get seen or taken care of or connected to. So there's 3 different kinds of childhood imprints that a person can get. How many?
3.
One more time, twice as loud?
3.
Thank you. There's 3 different kinds that people can get. The first is identity level imprints. What are they called, please?
Identity level imprints.
Thank you. Identity level imprints. So these are the ones that imprint about yourself. These are the ones about self. Some of the most common childhood imprints, and there's a lot, but some of the most common are, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm unlovable. I don't deserve, or I'm undeserving. I'm undeserving of, ... I'm unworthy of, ... so unworthy. I'm not important, or I don't matter, sometimes is how that one shows up. So notice if any of these are something that you may be able to intuitively feel that you have inside of you. And sometimes you notice these because your inner dialogue, right, your inner chatter sometimes says some of these things. So you're kind of very consciously aware that you've had this inside of you. So that's identity level imprints. The second one is imprints around others. Around who, please?
Others.
Thank you, others. And these are the ones that have to do with what people are going to be like. Childhood imprints around what people are going to be like. People can't be trusted. People will hurt you. People will learn things about you and use it against you. People lie. People abandon you. People don't know how to love. People can't connect. And the interesting thing about the imprints that have to do with others, and in fact, the world and life as well, which I'll get to in just a minute, is that whatever is stored into your in your subconscious, you attract to you. So it's not actually that the world is this way, but when you have that hologram, if I just might use a really woo-woo word, if you have that hologram stuck in your subconscious, that's what you see, and that's also what you attract to you. Because we tend to only be able to attract what makes sense to us in our minds. Everything else, either we don't attract it or we don't see it. It's there, but we don't notice it, because our radar's not on for that. So when we have this, people lie, people can't be trusted, people hurt us. If we have some of these childhood imprints, we tend to attract people that lie and hurt us, right? So y'all probably seen The Secret, right? Most of you probably seen The Secret or What the Bleep, and you've heard somewhere along the way that your thoughts are things, that your thoughts attract to you certain life situations, circumstances. And Dr. Michael Beckwith in The Secret actually said this, and The Secret spoke about this for just a second. There's only one person that spoke about it, and he said it for a second. He said, what you think about is what you bring about. But it's not just what your conscious mind is thinking, it's also what's stored in your subconscious. And that's the rub. That's how he said it. And so, when you start wondering what you're attracting into your life, one of the places you want to look is, what are my childhood imprints? Because try as you might, with all that elbow grease, I've seen people go into relationships courses trying to attract the right partner, and they go to more relationship courses, and they journal about their perfect partner, and they do all this inner work because they want to attract the right partner, and the partner never shows up. I actually worked with a woman who did exactly that. She did all of these courses. She was 50 years old, drop-dead gorgeous, inside and out, radiant. I was like, how in the world have you, she told me I've gone my whole life without a boyfriend. Whole life without a boyfriend. And I thought, how is this even possible? You're amazing. And as we started to do her work, well, I'll get into that in a minute. Remind me to finish that story later, because that gets into a family entanglement issue. So the last one is world and life. Your imprints around world and life. What are they, please?
World and life.
Thank you. World and life. And your imprints around world and life is, what is life going to be like? What is the world going to be like? Life's hard. Common imprints. Life's a struggle. You have to work hard. You have to work hard if you want anything, or it's only worth it if you work really hard to get it. There's not enough money. Money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. These are all things that you might have heard in your childhood, right? They get imprinted. There's not enough. So all these things, right? This is about life. This is about the world. Also get imprinted in us. And then when we wonder, why are we having certain experiences we don't want? And here's the sad thing. We get upset at ourselves. Our self-esteem starts to go downhill, right? Our self-confidence goes downhill because we blame ourselves. I've worked so hard, why can't I do this? I must be stupid. Other people are doing this. How come I can't do this? Other people have found a partner, or other people have a business that's working, or other people's career seems to be okay, or they can get a job, or they have enough money, or how come their health is fine? How come they can lose weight so easy? And I can't. And then you blame yourself, and you feel down, and you feel bad about yourself, which is a downward spiral, is it not? Right? The beauty of this work, the beauty of just even knowing this work, just that you are opening your minds to this tonight and learning this tonight, is already the crack in the door that is the path to the new destination. Because just being consciously aware of this already begins to melt some of the structure that holds it in place. You know what I mean? So that's childhood imprints, and that's the basics of it. So take a moment, find a partner, and share just 1 minute each. I'll let you know when 1 minute has passed. Just 1 minute each, just share some of the stuff that you think you might have in your imprints based on what you remember of your childhood, based on what you guessed about your mom when she was pregnant with you, based about what you notice as a pattern in your life that you can't get rid of, even though you tried with it. So everybody go, ovaries. So go ahead and find a partner, and if you need a partner and you don't have one, just stand up, and anyone else who's standing can see you. Grab a partner.
Everybody else have to come first. You gotta see that they're okay. You just have to.
Please go ahead and switch. Please go ahead and switch if you haven't already.
That's when you have a child, they would someone else take their child. You don't want to
We gotta go down.
it was like kind of more
All right, good, good, good. Please thank your partner, whatever way feels good.
Thank you, Ray. I took care of it.
All right.
I have a facility of my own, so I've got 2 kids.
So now let's turn our attention to family entanglements. What are they called, please?
Family entanglements.
Right. So the name is a little bit self-explanatory, and I'll tell you the basic definition of a family entanglement. A family entanglement is when you inherit a pattern or problem from somewhere in the generations, plural. Now, as a therapist for 10 years, one of the main places that people look when they're in therapy is we look at what's called the family of origin, right? We look at you and your parents. We're like, okay, well, what did you learn from your parents? What coping mechanisms did you learn from your parents? What ways of interacting with life and others did you learn from your parents? But where did your parents get it from? Their parents. And where did their parents get it from?
Their parents.
That's right. So what this is really starting to do is to take a much more systemic or holistic view of what you inherit, of what makes you up. What are the components that make you up psychologically, subconsciously? Because stuff gets passed down through the subconscious mind, down the generations. And it's not just parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. It's aunts and uncles, great-aunts and uncles, great-great-aunts and uncles. It's everybody that is blood related to you. It's not usually people who have married in. It's usually people who are blood related to you. However, I have seen people who are adopted take on the entanglements of their adopted family. I also have seen people take on entanglements from somebody who married into the family, or even somebody who's a friend of the family. This happens sometimes. It's not the usual, but it does happen. So that said, so problems and patterns that go down the generations. Now here I've drawn what's called a genogram. So here's you. Females are circles, men are squares, according to traditional genogrammic etiquette. And so here I have just a female at the bottom. This is you. Here's dad and mom, grandpa, grandma, grandpa, grandma. Okay? Does that make sense so far? Just the black circles and squares? So the way that family entanglements travel down the generations is the first thing that you look for is an originating incident. What's it called, please?
Originating incident.
Thank you. An originating incident. That is the incident that causes the ripple effect of entanglements to go down the generations. And so the originating incident is the first incident that is some kind of tragedy or trauma or real difficult thing, basically, that somebody in the family went through. Okay? The originating incident is like the first kind of, not the first in a series of difficult things that a family member went through. So let's look at the example. I'm just going to show you how it runs down the family tree because it doesn't go down the family tree in the exact same way. It's not a carbon copy. It goes down the family tree down in terms of topics. So if there's a money entanglement, you'll see that there's money problems spotted throughout the family tree as you go lower. If it's a love or relationship thing, then you see this love relationship kind of traveling down through the generations, jumping around different people. If it's a business thing, then you see a business thing kind of going down through the generations. If it's a health thing, you see a health thing going down through the generations. And as it goes down, it changes form, or it changes flavor. What's the word, please?
Flavor.
Thank you. It changes flavor. So let's just say that this is dad, this is grandpa. Let's say that your dad's dad, your grandpa, lived through the Depression. Now the Depression is one of those world incidences that cause entanglements for a lot of people. It's just one of those world tragedies, right? People live through it. So some of these things are out of our control. And let's say that he goes through it and he loses the family money, all of it. This is a tragedy or trauma around money. Boom, originating incident on a money entanglement. As that goes down through the generations, let's say it hits your dad. Now it doesn't hit everybody down the generations, I'll explain that in a minute, but let's say it hits your dad. His flavor of entanglement is bankruptcy. He finds that he has to file for bankruptcy once, maybe twice. And then it travels down the generations and it hits you, and you find that your flavor of this money entanglement is that you struggle to get your business to grow. You struggle to get enough customers. You struggle to keep your income to get past a certain point. And that is the money ceiling. How does that go again? Can you say and do that with me?
Money ceiling.
Nice. So if you notice you have a money ceiling, this is one of the first places you want to look. Who else in my family struggled with money or business? Who else in there? On mom's side, I just went ahead and did a relationship entanglement. So on mom's side, mom lost a love. He died in a car accident before they got married. But this was her first love, and they were going to get married. This is just an example. Now mom has a love entanglement that goes down the generation and hits you, and you find that you just struggle to find the right partner. Man, you've been dating, and you date so much you get sick of dating, and you just want to be single for a while, and be left alone, and go back to dating. And maybe you find somebody, maybe you find somebody and it works for a little bit, and then it just crashes, right? That's love entanglement. Now what I want you to be aware of is that there are other forces at play that aren't your fault. You are not the cause of these problems. When you're running into money problems here and relationship problems here, these are not your fault. And no amount of elbow grease and learning new extra things is going to bowl it over, because 90% of your results are determined from your which part of your mind?
Subconscious.
Thank you, subconscious mind. So that's going to win out over the conscious mind. You can 10% your elbow grease as much as you want. That 90% is going to take over. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Turn to your neighbor and say, this makes sense. Good, thank you. Good brain break. So that's how entanglements travel down the generations. Now, question you might have is, how do they go down the generations? There's two ways that they go down the generations. One is through the subconscious mind. All the family members, at least while you're in utero, you're next to the people that have, done what they did to make a baby. You're definitely inside your mom, right? And then as you grow up, you can be around them, but even just the sperm and the egg, right, have this information inside of them, and the DNA, things like that. Beyond that, your subconscious mind is connected with your familial subconscious. There's such a thing, y'all have heard that when you have a group of people together, there's the individual minds in the group, and then there's the group mind, this thing that forms in the space that you're in, that is kind of like, all of a sudden people get new ideas and all kinds of things happen because you're in that space of group mind. It's its own thing. Well, we also have a familial subconscious. There is a subconscious that is this whole sort of systemic subconscious that we are each plugged into from our family system. So it's like an information superhighway. It's just like the internet. It's like stuff's floating through the air. There's information moving in and out, and you're plugged into it. So that's one way it travels down. A second way it travels down is through epigenomes. What's the word, please?
Epigenomes.
Nice, thank you. Epigenomes. Epigenomes, thank you. Epigenomes sit above your genes. They sit above your little DNA. And if you look it up online, and if and when you look it up online, you'll see that you've got little strands with the helix right now, kind of, well, I'm just kind of... So these little epigenomes sit just above, and they're like, hey. They sit above each little spot there. Now these guys, these little epigenomes, are affected by environmental stressors. So they can be changed, damn it, by what happens to you and around you in your life and how you feel about those things that are happening to you and around you. Which means, Grandpa goes through the depression, he has this like, oh, big blow, he's lost all of the family fortune, all the family money. So he's got this whole, like, this pain around money, and that goes in and affects the epigenomes. And the epigenomes actually have a say on whether or not a gene is turned on or off, if it's expressed loudly or softly. And then, boom, down the generations. Because these life stressors, these things that happen in your life, change your DNA through the epigenomes, and that gets passed down through sperm and egg. So there's a couple of ways that these kind of go down through the generations. And I want you to keep in mind that it doesn't hit everybody. It's just like a genetic trait. It fades after a few generations. It actually hits about 25 to 30 people. How many, please?
25 to 30 people.
Thank you. It's about 25 to 30 people before it fades. And generally, as it goes down the generations, it becomes lighter, lesser, right? So the next thing you know, you have a kid, and maybe the kid just struggles to get a job, but eventually does okay. So like it kind of gets watered down as you go down the generations. That is true for all of them, except murder. So if you know of a murder in your family, either the murderer or the murderee, the perpetrator or the victim, if you know of a murder in your family, or if you even suspect a murder in your family, These things all entanglements last about 7 generations. How many, please?
7 generations.
Thank you. 7 generations. So the loved ones, the money ones, the business ones, the health ones, they last about 7 generations, and they kind of they jump around 25 to 30 people, and they fade out as they get lower, further away from the originating incident. Except murder. Murder is such a big, profound, big, deep act of taking somebody's life that whether or not it's the perpetrator or the victim is the one that was in your family, you'll tend to have a pattern for longer than 7 generations. And it can be a stronger pattern for longer than 7 generations. It's just heavy, it's big. Yes.
Is suicide considered?
Is suicide considered murder? No. Suicide can be an originating incident, or it can be the sign or symptom that there was something higher up that is causing that. And that is called a pull towards death, which I'll describe in a little bit.
Genocide?
Genocide, yes. Genocide, yes. We'll get to that too. Fun topics tonight, right? Turn your neighbors like, I'm glad I came here. I'm totally joking. I know it's heavy. At the same time, it's really helpful. It's really helpful, really, because what starts to happen, the more you know about this, the more you see that your life is not your conscious mind's creation. That there are other forces at play from within your family system, from within your childhood imprints, that have an effect on what's going on for you. And that stuff is not your fault. So, that said, you don't need to know all of your family history. There's a lot of people that work with me who my relatives are dead, I have no idea. You don't need to know all that in order for this work to work, so don't worry about that piece. If you know some stuff, great. The heaviest bloods to have, because since this is usually blood related, like I said, we look at who's in your bloodline. Some of the heaviest or most difficult, most entanglement-laden family systems are if you have, and of course you'll notice that these are the people that have suffered a lot. This is not an exhaustive list, but Native American, do you have Native American blood in you? African American, Chinese, German, and I know you can start to think of the incidences and some of the wars and some of the things that have happened, the genocides. Jewish, Russian, English, they went and terrorized a big part of the world. Spanish, they did too, so perpetrators. Irish, right, they're fighting each other. Cambodian, for those of you that know the Pol Pot regime, much bigger than the Holocaust. Way bigger. How many died in the Holocaust? Was it
6 million.
6 million?
6 million Jews, 10 million people.
So 10 million people. I think the Pol Pot regime was 22 million?
Yeah, close enough.
I mean, and we don't talk about that here in the States, oddly enough, because we weren't the superheroes that came in and fixed it, but that's a sidebar. So Polish blood, Vietnamese blood, right? So you gotta think about, what are some of the wars? Do you know if anybody in your family, do you know if you come from a bloodline where family members were involved in the war, any wars, or killed in the wars? These are some of the things you want to start looking at and thinking about. Slavery, right? Was anybody involved in slavery? And it's not just Africans that have been involved in slavery, it's all over the place. It's still happening right now in all kinds of ways. We've got a lot of sexual slavery going on. So it's stuff that you want to start paying attention to. What we're going to do is start to piece your family system together and start to get you a clearer picture of what is at effect in your life, in your money, in your business, in your relationships, your health, and your happiness or your mood, right? Because some people, they work with me and they say, well, I just feel sad a lot and I don't know why. I'm just kind of sad, down. Or I have a lot of anxiety and I get stressed really easily, but I don't know why. And it seems like there's stuff in your life that's causing it, but there's also times where there's not stuff in your life, but you still kind of feel it and you wonder why. It's not always congruent. And that's one thing about it that I will share with you. Your conscious mind needs to make sense of all these repeat patterns that are happening in your life, so it attracts to you and tries to make sense of why you're feeling stressed all the time. So if you have one of those lots of anxiety, lots of stress, your conscious mind will actually try to create situations that make it make sense that you're feeling that much stress and anxiety, right? I'm sure you've met some people before that get really stressed out at the littlest things, and everything is just really stressful for them all the time. And you're like, whoa, what is going on with them? They probably have an entanglement that causes anxiety and stress, and they allow every little thing to be a stressor in their life because they have to make sense of that constant feeling of stress and anxiety. If you didn't, you'd feel crazy. You'd feel crazy. If your life was just kind of going pretty easy and smooth and you're sitting there panicking all the time, you would be like, I am cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? Turn to your neighbor and say, I don't want to be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So that's how the conscious mind starts to get involved and tries to make sense out of all this stuff. And the reason that I like this work, here comes one of those hand-body movements. The reason that I like this work is that it is ultra concentrated, tied with bleach.
Ultra concentrated, tied with bleach.
And it is because it gets your whites whiter, it gets your colors brighter, and it does, like it gets your whites whiter, it cleans out all that old dirt and stuff and cobwebs and junks up in your like the attic of your subconscious, and it makes your colors brighter. Your life actually gets happier, better, easier when you get rid of this stuff. I'm living proof. I was having a horrible time for the last 10 years. And this stuff was able to get rid of the majority of my symptoms even before I knew what I had and could treat it with medicine, which I'm finally doing now. Yay! And it also helped me with my business, because I was struggling to get stuff to happen. But I've got some stuff up in my family tree that gets in the way of business and money that I had to handle. And let's start getting into some of that. Let me just see if there's anything else I want to cover. Oh, okay, we'll come back to that later. Well, let's do that first, because it's fun. We're going to do some fascinating facts. What are they called, please?
Fascinating facts.
Thank you. Fascinating facts. One fascinating fact is birth order. Now, this is a rule of thumb. What's it called, please?
Rule of thumb.
Thank you. That means it doesn't hold and apply in every single case. So I don't want you to grab onto this like it's like the lifeboat sail, whatever that thing is, that donut that they throw at you, the lifesaver. I don't want you to grab a hold of this like it is like life or death. It's a rule of thumb. Nonetheless, if you've ever wondered or noticed how there can be 4 children in a family and each child is pretty darn different, and one or two does really well with like money and their life is kind of sorted out, and there's just one that just can't get anything together and they're totally just like, you know, dragged into the dirt, getting in trouble with the law, into drugs, alcoholism, whatever, and then the other, you know, like each kid is different, right? How does that happen if you have the same parents? What happens is each kid is entangled with something different. The ones that are doing really well financially don't have a money entanglement. It didn't hit them as it went down the generations. So here's what we want to kind of take a look at with birth order. Here's the general pattern. Firstborns. How many firstborns are in the room? Raise your hands. Lots of us. Hello. Firstborns. Firstborns, you tend to follow your father's side of the family tree. So you may pick up more of the entanglements on dad's side. Secondborns, where are you? Raise your hands.
Second and last.
Second and last, that works. Secondborns, you tend to follow your mom's side of the family tree. 10. We pick up both sides. You gotta remember, we like to do double duty. We like to help out a lot. Yes, question.
What if, like, my father had a daughter with another one, like,
Yes, so if you're like a first in one family and a second in another family, you do some of each.
Okay.
You're special.
You're an overachiever. Yes.
What if there was a child born that died in between? I mean,
If there's a
died
child,
of
thank
birth.
you. If there's a child that was born and died, if there's a stillborn, if there's an abortion, it changes your birth order.
Oh,
Ooh, you may not be the number you thought you were.
that's right.
Yes,
Identical twin?
identical twins. That would be interesting. You might want to look at who was born the few minutes earlier and see if there's a pattern with dad and then mom, right? You just kind of have to look. Remember, this is a rule of thumb, but it just gives us a little bit of guidance and it's kind of fun. Thirdborns, are there any thirdborns in the room?
Yes, I'm a third born now.
Oh, you're a thirdborn after all. You had to change your number. Thirdborn as well. So thirdborns, you're a little bit of a mystery. You like to stay mysterious. Sometimes you do dad's side. Sometimes you do mom's side. Sometimes you do both. Sometimes you just like to do relationship replication and you pick up on the relationship patterns between your mom and your dad and replicate those. Excellent, I know, right?
There's
How
no difference here.
about fourthborns? Are there any fourthborns in the room? Number fours? All right, fourthborns tend to have it kind of rough. They can. Especially if fourthborns think that they're going to be the last one born. So whether or not you are a fourth born, or you are the last one born in the series, you can have it rougher because you are on cleanup duty. What's it called, please?
Cleanup duty.
Thank you. Cleanup duty. Because you're the last one in there. It's like every other entanglement that the ones before you didn't pick up, you're there sweeping up the poo behind the elephant. You're like that guy. You know what I'm talking about, that guy? You're that guy. So lastborns tend to have the cleanup symptomology of trying to just kind of get in there and do a lot of cleanup. And then if you're fifth born, it starts the same pattern again. 5 is just like 1. So 5 is dad, 6 is mom, 7s are just like 3. It's the mom, dad, both a relationship. 8 is just like 4s, which is having a rough one, thinking that it'll last. A lot of fourthborns, you'll notice, can get in trouble with alcoholism, drugs, law. They can have a really rough life. And lastborns in general can have a really rough life. Only children, where are you? Me and you are the only children in the room?
I'm an only child, sorry.
Okay,
What if you grow up alone?
not the same. You're going to have, in a Newtonian reality, from a conscious mind reality, you're going to have the growing up with like a single child symptomology of often being better with adults, growing up fast because you're around adults a lot, not as many kids to play with, independence, you're going to have a lot of that kind of stuff. That's the Newtonian conscious mind stuff. From the subconscious perspective, you're still picking up on whatever birth order you're at, even if you grew up just with your parents.
What if I was the only live birth? Is that still only child? Because my mother had a miscarriage before me.
Okay. We would have to look in your family tree to see, so you might have only child, you might have second born. We'd have to take a look. Again, this is just kind of for fun. It's a rule of thumb thing. It kind of gives you a little bit of a place to start looking. So only children, like this one here, the first thing you want to do when you get born is to get some brothers and sisters because you're doing it all by yourself. You're the cleanup behind the elephant with the poo and everything else. Like you're the one. Have you guys seen that photo or that movie of a guy who gets his head stuck in an elephant's butt? The elephant backs up on him and he's actually trying to clean the poo and the elephant's his head goes in the butt. I think that might be what only kids have got. Yes.
It's kind of unique because I'm an only child, but I was raised an only child, but I've got like 9 other siblings.
Are they blood related?
Some of them are.
Some of them are? Then you wouldn't probably have only children.
Dad was a musician.
Dad was a musician. Lots of kids kind of around the country. So,
The world.
The world. Oh, he did. All right, nice. So yeah, you probably don't have only child symptomology. Probably don't. There's some people who share it with. Although we'd have to look. What it really is that you just end up taking up more entanglements because there's less people to share it with. Now if I tell you about this whole sharing thing, what's the sharing thing about? Why would you want to share entanglements? Why would you want to help sweep up entanglements? What's that about? Hold that question. Remember that question. The reason it has to do with the reason we get entangled in the first place. The reason we get entangled in the first place is actually manifold. There's a number of reasons. I'm just going to share a couple. Number 1, in Newtonian reality, just regular reality, when you're a little kid and you see your mom is crying and she's sobbing and she's really sad, what's the first thing your little heart wants to do?
Make her better.
Make her better, make her better, fix it. Family entanglements are the same thing, but we're looking at the whole family rather than just the parents. Your subconscious is plugged in to the information superhighway of your whole family system. When somebody else is hurting, your little heart wants to fix it. You might not consciously be aware that someone else is hurting, but your subconscious damn well knows that someone else is hurting. And the way that our subconscious try to actually help is we try to, if you can imagine this family tree, that's why I keep pointing up, or, right, I'm imagining that I've got dad, mom, grandparents, great-grandparents, right, I'm kind of doing a family tree above me. So if I look up there, my subconscious, incorrect, my subconscious looks up there and sees like, oh my gosh, my grandpa had money problems. I can feel his pain. Let me carry that pain for you, Grandpa, so you no longer have to carry it. I will fix this for you so that it no longer hurts. What happens is we get entangled with it, we take on the problem as our own, and then the next thing you know, we have the problem, right? Turn to your neighbor and say, I end up with the problem.
I end up with the problem.
And the funny thing is, Grandpa probably still has the problem. right? It's not like you've actually resolved him or absolved him of the problem. Worse yet, most of the time you're getting entangled with dead people's problems. It doesn't even matter anymore when you're getting entangled with it. But the family system, the family subconscious does not work inside time space. It actually works outside time space. So people that are dead, you can still feel all the information is all still there. It's not like it dies. Our subconscious, the way that it works, they're not in essence dead. Another reason that we get entangled is out of love. Turn to your neighbor and say, love. It's because our little hearts love so much and we want to make it better. And sometimes what we're trying to do is bring balance back into the family system. When there was an injustice, when something went wrong, when something didn't go well, it kind of can leave this weight, this problem. We kind of want to bring balance back. Especially if there's a perpetrator-victim issue up in the branches of the family tree. We want to bring balance back. If somebody took something that wasn't theirs, we want to bring balance back. So you see that money entanglements. When somebody in the family receives more inheritance than they were supposed to, or doesn't get the inheritance they were supposed to, that's an imbalance around money. And one, it's a point of pain, so we reach up there and we try to take on the problem as our own and solve it. But two, there's this imbalance between the siblings. Brother got all the inheritance, sister didn't get any. And so we're trying to bring balance back and we end up getting entangled in that situation, replicating it in our own lives, in a subconscious effort to resolve it. So, that said, another fascinating or fun fact, money. Turn to your neighbor and say, money! Money! So money problems, anything around money problems and business problems, as a rule of thumb, what's the word please? Rule of thumb. Thank you. As a rule of thumb, travels down the dad side of the family tree.
Thank you, Dad.
Travels down the dad side of the family tree. It does not mean you don't get entangled with money stuff on your mom's side. Doesn't mean that at all. But as a rule of thumb, that stuff tends to travel down dad's side. Dads traditionally have been the one that make money, that have business. It's kind of dad's realm, men's realm, traditionally and in history. And weight. For those of you that have struggled with weight, one of the places that you look is, where was there a disrespected woman or mother in your family tree? Where was there a disrespected woman or mother in your family tree?
Who isn't?
Who isn't a disrespected woman?
Yeah, what woman hasn't been?
It's a very good point you make,
Yeah.
and that's a whole other class that I teach. But yeah, I know. Yes, I know. But then there's I don't mean just little tiny disrespect, but a little bit more of the heavier stuff.
Such as
More than the usual that's going
More
on
than
at
the
the
usual that
time.
all of us have to put up with.
That's going on at the time.
What was the magic that you did to turn it back on? Do you just kind of dance with it and turn it on and off again and?
She's really
She's gonna
well
spread her
done.
magic. Let me take some questions before I move on further with, oh no, wait, let me finish weight. So, other reasons for weight also have to do with, and this comes with some childhood imprinting stuff, if there was a time in your past where you were harmed, where somebody did something with you sexually or physically that felt harmful, and one of the things that we do is we put on weight to be kind of bigger and to get more space and be stronger, and to deter people from coming close to us again. Sometimes, once we've had a bad experience with sexual energy, we don't want sexual energy coming back at us again. So subconsciously we put on weight so we don't fit the ideal paradigm of what gets a bunch of attention in this society, and it helps us kind of push away some of the stuff that once harmed us. So weight can also come from there. Weight can also come from if there's any kind of beef between you and your mom. Because part of eating is that nourishment. And I know y'all, how many of you heard the term emotional eating? Right? Emotional eating. The reason that we emotionally eat in part is that our subconscious during the childhood imprint years, when we suckle, that's close to mom. That's our first intimacy, that's our first tenderness, that's our first closeness, that's our first connection, and that's our first nourishment. So whenever we don't feel quite as well, our subconscious is like, oh, go back to that place, right? And then we want to put things in our mouth and eat them. And so if there's beef between you and your mom, or if you're feeling like you're not having enough connection, intimacy, nourishment, fulfillment in your life, that actually can trigger the emotional eating. And the emotional eating goes back to that childhood imprint of suckling, nurturance, intimacy, connection. That feels like it's feeding us, that feels like it's filling us.
What about the Dr. Spock generation? We weren't breastfed.
Yeah,
We were put on a schedule and you'll
Given
eat
formula.
when it's time.
Given formula.
Yep.
Still in those formative years, you're eating, you had to suckle something at one point, even if it was a rubber nipple,
Yeah.
right? And so it's still your first experience of nourishment. Now, somewhere in there, you're here in that chair, so clearly you ate something when you were a baby. So in that experience, and it may be a different experience, and it may not quite, we've got to start looking at like how that affects our relationship with food in our bodies based on what happens. So like now you're talking about, you're bringing in a whole other element. Well, what happens to all of us who are raised in this Dr. Spock years? I was raised with that too. Sounds like it came back on then, right?
My mom was taught, don't pick up your baby or cuddle your baby too much, it spoils them.
Yeah.
What?
How insane is that?
And you've seen that through history. There's all these different fads and fashions that cause all kind of problems. And here's what I want to tell you about that though. Nothing is permanent. Don't think that just because something happened, you can't do something about it. I'm proof you can do something about it. This work and all the clients, the hundreds of people that I've worked with are proof that you can do something about it. Last fascinating fact I want to share with you is it warm in here or is it just because I'm just like standing and moving around?
No, it's warm.
It's warm? Okay, because I feel like I'm sweating more than I would normally sweat from just standing and talking. All right, the last one is namesake. What's it called? Oh wait, before I do that, I said I was going to take some questions. You had a question? Totally forgot it. If you have a question, jot it down in your notebook. I will come back around. Paul.
Yeah, what's the relationship between being abused by a family member and having entanglement? Those are two different things, right?
Yes, ooh, abuse. The question is, what is the relationship between being abused by a family member and an entanglement? So, from a childhood imprint perspective, you're going to have some imprints around the way that you were treated. And if it was less than friendly, then that causes its own childhood imprints around whether or not people can be trusted, whether or not people are safe, whether or not the world is safe, whether or not it's safe to let people in or connect or get close or have physical sexual intimacy. That stuff does get in the way. Entanglements have to do with stuff that happened in previous generations coming down and you pick up that patterning. But abuse, you pick up an internalized patterning from the live Newtonian reality. And there's stuff that imprints around that. And don't mistake that you can have stuff happen to you when you're older and still have a more sort of adult imprint. There are people who get beat up and bullied once they're in their junior year of high school, or who get raped later in life, right? I mean, there are tragedies and traumas that happen later on in life. Those can end up being originating incidents in the family tree and more entanglement stuff. And our brains are malleable, right? We still get imprints when we're older, just not at the same deep depth and level when we were younger. You know what I'm saying? Turn to your neighbor and say, I know what she's saying. I know what she's saying. Yes?
Pick up does it have to be vertical? Can you pick them up from cousins?
Good question. Can you pick up sideways entanglements, ones from the same generation as you? Generally no, unless they're older. So, generally no. Everything's a case-by-case basis. We are all like a thumbprint. Turn to your neighbor and say, I'm a thumbprint. We're all unique, right? And so I know that I'm describing to you patterns that normally happen in a family system because it gives us some structure to learn about this from. And I'd have to look at your family tree to see, because if it's clear as day that you picked up on a pattern that your cousin had and you're having like a really similar experience, I might be like, whoa. But the thing to look at is there someone higher up in the family tree you don't know about who had an experience that your cousin and you are entangled with? That's usually more likely. It's just someone that you don't know. Yes, Hugh?
Can you turn the birth order on the side and then somehow get the better half of it instead of the negative?
I couldn't quite hear what you were saying.
Can you use the birth order in a positive way?
Birth order in a positive way.
Yeah. but,
Oh,
you
when
know.
you get good stuff, you think it's.
Okay, you do get good imprints and you do get good entanglements. Part of the work of when you're actually reversing this stuff and kind of moving it out and cleaning it out and unplugging your subconscious from it is that you are bringing in other resources and positive things from your family tree, other family members in the family system, and or we're going in and re-imprinting the imprints, and you get to choose what you put back in there. So if the imprint is I'm unlovable, you get to choose what you'd rather have instead. You don't want to just clear it out. And there's a lot of therapies out there that just clear out stuff. They don't replace, okay? Clear out stuff, fine. Now you're left in this blank static state. A lot of people, if you don't, I've worked with people where they don't have something put in place afterwards. They feel very they'll say, I feel very spacey, I feel very strange, I feel like I'm not quite myself. I don't even know, this just feels really odd, because there's an absence there. And having that absence can actually make it harder for your internal system to let go of the entanglement or imprint because there is no safe place to land. Make sense? Your subconscious is in charge of keeping you safe and alive. What's it in charge of? Safe and alive. Which means it's not going to have you jump from this place that it's familiar with and that it knows. Even though it's painful and it's sucky and you've lived with it and you hate it, it's going to stay with what's familiar and what it knows unless there's a safe place to jump over to. If you're just like, here, it's absence. It's just the absence of that shitty stuff. Your subconscious is not as likely to want to leave. But if you're like, look at this really great stuff that you can have instead. Let's make this a really strong landing place. Then it's like, okay, let's go. So that's the mistake that a lot of therapies and internal work modalities can make, is not setting up what to replace it with. Yes?
On that same point, once you get the imprinting in, do you have to continue to find ways to sustain that imprinting so you don't get negative?
When you re-imprint, do you need to do things to sustain the new imprint? No. Not unless there's other imprinty stuff that ends up. We don't have singular incidences, right? They're all balled up together. Imagine a bowl of cherries or a group of grapes. A group of grapes? A group of grapes. Imagine a group of grapes. I think they call it and here's the thing, it's like bowling. You can actually knock down a bunch of pins at once sometimes, right? That's called an assault. You just kind of and the reason that we go for the originating incident, when I work with people, I'm not working down here, I'm not working with that, I'm going to the originating incident to wash it all down, right? So let's see, what I leave off on. We were doing some questions, but first, before I take any more questions, I want you to stand up and do a little bit of stretching. I want your body to get a little bit of movement, your lungs to get a little bit of movement. And what we're going to do is something that helps your brain actually digest what you just learned, which is brain gym. It's something from brain gym. So you're going to take your hand to opposite knee, and you're going to bump it. Bam! Opposite hand to opposite knee, bam! And you're going to do that back and forth. Find some people to do this silly dance with. When the brain is integrated, find some people to do the brain dance with. All right, shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. Stretch in whatever way you want to stretch, whatever feels good. Move it around, move it around. Groan, let it all out. Good, 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 good. Go ahead and find a seat. Find your seat. Find your bottom seat. Find your seat in your hands. Don't find your neighbor's seat in your hands. Unless you want to. All right. All right. I'm also going to give your brain a little bit of a giggle, a little bit of a laugh. So if you can turn to neighbors on either side of you to make sure that everybody gets gotten, give them a high five and say, I'm going to clean it up. Good. Good. The last fascinating fact I want to share before we dive into some of the details is namesake. What's it called, please? Namesake. Thank you. How many in here are named after somebody? First name or middle name, named after someone in the family usually. So you want to look at who you're named after. Who are you named after? Because you get much more deeply plugged in to their stuff. Whatever their problems were around money, business, relationships, health, and happiness, you tend to pick up on stronger when you're named after them. It makes sense logically, and yet it kind of doesn't, because you're like, really, could that happen? Yes, I've seen it happen a bunch. In fact, I worked with this woman that I told you earlier, 50-year-old, radiant, gorgeous, amazing woman, and I was like, you've never had a boyfriend and you're 50? She took all of these classes, all the woo-woo classes, all the non-woo-woo classes. She wrote journals upon journals of what she was trying to manifest into her life. This lover, and she wrote down all the details of what she wanted him to be like, and all these things. Nothing. Nothing. And then she found me, and she said, all right, I gotta look into this. And she heard me speak, and she heard namesake. She came up to me afterwards. She said, I am named after my aunt. I said, okay, what's her story? She grew old and died a spinster. Alone her whole life. It's like, all right, let's go deal with that originating incident. Went and cleaned that up. 2 weeks later, how many weeks later? 2. Ooh, 2 weeks later, manifested her beloved. She wrote to me an email, all excited, and she got on the phone and called me and said, you will not believe it. It's exactly what I wrote in my journal. All this time that I've been trying to attract him, I still had this linchpin, I still had this one thing stuck in the ground that wouldn't let him in. The moment I released it 2 weeks later, here he is. And they had this totally amazing experience of getting to know each other and falling in love. And he was totally like present, intimate, the whole thing, really connected. And they were like, I think you're the one, I think you're the one. They're still together, totally happy. And it was the linchpin, the thing that was in the way was this entanglement. So she put in all that elbow grease, turn to your neighbor and say, elbow grease. Elbow grease. She had all that elbow grease put in, all that time and money you put in, trying to manifest her man. And the thing that was in the way was this damn entanglement. Pardon my French. It's not the first time tonight I've used a saucy word. But in part I do that because it kind of spices up the room and makes you kind of, oh, what? A little brain break. So that said, let me see how much time we have. Okay, we're doing pretty good, we're doing pretty good. Some questions. And I tell you what, if you have a question, please stand up and project the question, because it actually, for those of you who want to learn to speak and be a speaker and run your own rooms and run workshops and all that, little speaker tip. When people ask a question, it's really helpful if you ask them to stand, because it shifts and moves the energy in the room and it keeps the energy high. So whoever has a question, please stand. It helps you project. It directs some attention to the person. It does all kinds of things. Speaker, who has a question? Yes, please stand.
How do you face them?
You can face them. Yeah, why not? Say, hi, my name is...
How do you untangle a namesake? Because it seems like it's not as clear as just like bankruptcy or,
How do you disentangle? You disentangle a namesake. Thank you. How do you disentangle a namesake if you have one of those types of entanglements? It's the same way that you disentangle any other entanglement. Carefully. It's the same way that you entangle all of them, which is getting the subconscious. There's a whole process to getting the subconscious to let go of trying to help that person and fix their problems or bring balance back into the family system. And each person is different and unique, and sometimes you need a little bit of, everyone might need a little different of a tweak or not, it just depends. But there's ways to get your subconscious to, first of all, acknowledge the entanglement. Second of all, let it go, release it, and stop trying to solve it and fix it. So it unplugs your subconscious from trying to, we're gonna make it better, we promise. Yes, please stand.
So, is the remainder of this class to teach us how to release and recognize, then release?
Yes, the question is the remainder of this class to teach you how to recognize and release. I'm not going to teach you how to release because you can't do your own stuff and you need a professional. But I'm going to do a session on you tonight. So I'm going to teach you how to recognize the signs and symptoms of having an entanglement based on the symptoms in your life or the stuff you know about in your family tree. You got 2 ways to figure it out, okay? And just figuring it out, just knowing about it consciously begins to crack open that window and that door to a new place. And then I'm going to do a session. It's an abbreviated session, of course, because a normal session's in an hour and a half. But nonetheless, we're going to do a session. Yes. Here's the thing. If I take too many questions, we don't have time for the session. So who has a burning question that needs to be answered? Hugh.
Can someone else who is close to you, like significant others, help you untangle your?
No.
No?
Good question. Can a significant other help you untangle your stuff? No. It's the same thing with therapy. You do not want your partners or anyone close to you, in that sense, like your mom or dad doing your stuff. No. More entanglements galore. It causes all manner of problems. Yes, please stand.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question about namesake. I'm curious because I don't have any children, but I'd like to name them after grandparents of mine. Is that dangerous? Since I didn't know them.
Yeah. So the question is, I want to name my children after my grandparents because that's why we're all named after somebody generally. It usually has to do with, oh, remembering this person, yeah. And yeah, your child's remembering that person by reliving out their problems. So, and sometimes it picks up some good stuff, but it definitely picks up the bad stuff much easier. So that said, you kind of want to know pretty intimately who you're naming the child after, what their life was like on each of those fronts. And if there's another way that you can remember your grandparents, here's how you can do that, by the way. I'll give you one tip on this. Create an altar in your home. Find photos of your relatives, any photos you can get your hands on any of them. And if you don't have photos, you go get some objects, find some objects, buy some objects that feel like they represent that person. Choose something like, this jade stone, this is going to be my grandma. This is what represents her. This, wooden figurine of a warrior, that's going to be my grandpa because he was in World War II. This kind of thing. Create an altar in your home. Remember them that way. Allow that to be the way that you remember and honor them versus entanglements. And my suggestion would be, find out, and the sticky situation is you kind of don't know some stuff that you don't know, which could end up wrapping your children around those problems. It's a little bit up to you. Yes?
Are you going to deal with entanglements and imprints in the same way?
Different ways. They're done differently. We're just going to do a disentanglement session tonight versus a child. So you don't want, here's the thing about this stuff. Okay, remember what I'm afraid to put this down because I'm afraid that that's what causes the thing. Okay, let's all do this together. Ultra. Concentrated.
Time.
With bleach. No, okay, good, it's still there. With bleach. This stuff is like doing a year's worth of therapy in a day. I've worked with people who have been in therapy for like a decade and they're struggling with certain things and we do one session and poof, the stuff that they've been working on forever is just gone. The stuff they've been working on forever, that hasn't healed. So that said, you cannot do too many of these sessions in a row. The max you would ever want to probably do is once every 2 weeks. Because you do not want to ask your subconscious system and your whole system, I mean your conscious system, your body, your energetic system, your subconscious system, you don't want to ask your system to have to integrate that much that quickly. You want to treat your system with respect and honor and give it some time to integrate the work. So I know that whenever people learn this, just like me, I'm one of those people, I want to have the life I want yesterday. Clean this stuff out yesterday, let's go. I want the life I want right now. And I understand that. I love the eagerness, and I love that you want to have the life that you want to have right now. And if you rush this, you actually go in the opposite direction. Another thing that people come to me and they say is, okay, I know I have a money entanglement, and a relationship entanglement, and a business entanglement. Go! Do it! One session, let's go. You cannot do that. It's the same thing. You're dealing with these huge things that have been in your life for so long. Your subconscious is wrapped in it. Your identity is often wrapped up in it. Right? Because once you live with something for a while, it becomes a part of you. And sometimes we start getting these backdoor benefits from the things that aren't so great in our lives. For example, sometimes when stuff is going really poorly, you talk to your friends and you say, hey, this is what's going on, and it's been really hard, and this and that, and your friends give you all this love and affection and attention, and oh my gosh, and let me make you some soup, and let me listen to you, and let me take you out to a movie, or whatever it is, and you start getting these backdoor benefits. So there's other things that keep it in place as well. I mean, I'm giving you the tip of the iceberg tonight. I'm giving it to you in big chunk form so you can understand the main big pieces. But normally I teach this stuff over an entire weekend. So I'm giving you the Jello shot. Turn to your neighbor and say, I like Jello shots. Okay. There will be time to ask more questions. In fact, I'm going to be having a series of online courses which y'all can be a part of, and you can, that's because I used to say you guys can be a part of, and I'm trying to break the habit of saying guys because that's not inclusive to women. Where did I pick that up from? Our gender-biased society. Okay, we were just talking about that earlier. So I say y'all now because I'm trying not to say you guys. That said, I can do that now. I can do this now. I'll pass this out. Go ahead and take these, take just one, pass these around. This is a sign-up sheet for, I'm going to be doing a series of teleclasses about this and about the business stuff, for those of you that are learning business stuff, about the business stuff I did to hit 6 figures in that first year with all the crazy illnesses and the traveling all that time. So I'm going to be teaching that. I'm going to be teaching family entanglement, child and imprint stuff. And I also have a 2-day event coming up where the whole first day is all the subconscious inner work, and the whole second day is all the outer game, how do you set up your business so that you can hit 6 figures easily, no matter where you're starting. So if you're interested in any of that, put your name and phone number on here. I will match it with your name and email on the sign-in sheet. By the way, did everybody sign in? Let me put this another way. Who did not sign in? I have both of your emails. I don't have your email. Anyone else? So on yours, can you please write your email very legibly underneath your phone number, if you sign up, if you want the other information. So that I can get it to you.
Will you be letting us know with the weeks in advance?
Yes, once I have the date, I'm going to email everybody who was interested and say, here's the dates.
Okay.
Definitely, I won't be like, not like this, where I was like, hey, guess what, 3 days from now I'm doing an event. I opened it up to the Bay Area Entrepreneur Group just a couple days ago. It was supposed to be just a private event originally, and it is kind of private, because it's not everybody who's normally in the group. So, let me see where I left off. We did namesake, we answered some questions. Let's actually look at some of the things, some of the types of entanglements. So, I'm going to just go this one, and we're going to go to the first one. So the first one that I've got listed here, this is an article that I wrote, and this article, which I will send to you if you have your name on there, stating that you want to get some stuff. This article helps you self-diagnose, basically. What I did is I put in here what I look for when I'm working with people to figure out which entanglements they have. So, it's not completely exhaustive, but it's a very good starting place for you to be able to figure out which one of these do I have. And in this article, it's got the signs and symptoms to look for in your own life, and then it's got the things to look for in your family tree, what kind of originating incidents might be up in there. So the first entanglement is no permission for success. What's it called, please?
No permission for success.
Fantastic, thank you. Now some of the things that you would look for in your own life, and we can lump this together with no permission for abundance. We're just going to lump the business one and the money one together just for time's sake right now. So things that you look for in your own life, of course, trouble growing your business, trouble getting enough customers, trouble earning money or making money, trouble holding on to money, keeping it, trouble spending money. People forget this one. Trouble spending money. If you have trouble letting go of money, if you hold on really tight to it because there's this inner fear or scarcity that's subconscious, and if you don't invest in yourself, and invest in growing your business, and invest in your own education so you can grow your business or your relationships or your health, whatever it is you're trying to do, you're not going to get very far. So a money entanglement actually can get in the way if you have trouble spending and letting go of money to invest it back in yourself, your business, your life. So those are some of the signs and symptoms to look for in your own life. Things to look for in your family tree. Who struggled with money? Who lost a lot of money? Did somebody gamble away a bunch of money? Did somebody lose a bunch of money in the stock market, the depression? Did somebody lose a bunch of money because they lost a business? In terms of business entanglements, did somebody fail a business or 2 or 3 or 4? Did somebody have anything illegal with money or business? Funny business with money. Backstabbing in business. Backstabbing around money. This kind of stuff. So these are all originating incidences. Number 3 is no permission for connection. Turn to your neighbor and push your fingers together and say, connection. No permission for connection. So this is the love one. This is the love entanglement. No permission for connection. Signs and symptoms to look for in your life. Do you feel less comfortable with connecting deeply? With deep intimacy, letting someone in really deep, really close. Is that hard for you? Now here's another way that this manifests, which is really tricky. Keep in mind that your subconscious is going to win. So if you have a no permission for connection entanglement, it's going to make sure that you don't have access to connection. Which means, if you are able to connect, if you have worked on yourself, you're the kind of person who can connect deeply with someone, what happens is you attract the people who cannot connect with you. Unavailable, unable to commit, unable to have intimacy. So either way, you're still without connection, whether it's sources from you or sources from the people you attract in your life. Now the no permission for connection one, even though it tends to be the love entanglement, affects your business. For those of you that are, or your job, if you're in your career and you're trying to advance, if you have a business and you're trying to grow it. When people feel like they can't connect with you deeply, when there's that subconscious thing inside of you that just kind of, it's either inward this way or outward that way. Either way, you're going to do something that blocks it. Use that word. I like using that word, but I know there's a dirty word in there. Okay, and so what happens is you don't get a lot of customers when people feel like they can't quite connect with you, and they won't know why. It's not like a person's going to say, oh, I was going to sign up to work with so-and-so, but I just couldn't feel like I could connect with them. I mean, sometimes they say that. We are in the Bay Area. People are pretty clued in. But a lot of times what people will say is, oh, yeah, I don't know. Just kind of, yeah, he's cool. He's cool. But just not there, right? So the no permission for connection affects business and career stuff too. It's not just love. Originating incidents is to look for in your family tree. Who lost a love? Did anybody lose a love? To death, to this, to that. Did anybody not get to be with someone that they wanted to be with? Wanted. Did anybody not get to be with somebody that they wanted to be with? So think about this, because it's only pretty recently that it's kind of okay in the United States to marry someone who is not your ethnicity. And in some places it's still not okay. In some places it's still contentious, right? So sometimes it's because of religion that some people couldn't marry. Sometimes it's because of race. Sometimes it was class. Oh, you can't marry them. Oh, they're a social climber. Oh, she just wants your money. He just wants your money because there's, So I know you've seen it in movies, but it's in our history. So anybody who did get to be with someone because of death, because of all of these cultural things, anybody who had a lot of walls up around their heart because maybe something tragic happened. Okay, anything that tragic happened. Things to look for also, another sign, are there a lot of divorces in your family? A lot of other people who struggled with relationships up in your family tree. That ends up giving you a bit of a sign. Okay. 4 is victim perpetrator. So how many of you know that in your family tree, somewhere in the bloodlines, you have some people that have been in a war or genocide? Okay, so this is in part victim perpetrator. Originating incidences you look for are wars, where people killed each other. Now, just because somebody was in a war and killed somebody doesn't mean that they immediately get coded as perpetrator or murderer. It depends on how that individual themselves conceived of the experience. Some people do go into war and then they kill somebody, and when they finally see the result of actually killing somebody, get kind of freaked out. Like, oh my God, I murder, or no, And then that's where the entanglement starts. That becomes the originating incident. But if the person just has this sort of, they've been so well trained, it's just like, war casualty, or sometimes they're very in a distance, right? You're in the plane, you drop some bombs, you do some gunning things, and you just don't have that up close, I just killed somebody thing. It's easier for them to digest that. So it really has to do with how they handle the war thing. Fantastic.
It's a cool balance.
Thank you. So, turn to your neighbor, give them a pat on the back, and say,
It's not you. Actually, give them a rub on the back.
No, rub on the back and say, it's not you, it's the entanglement.
It's not you.
It's not you, it's the entanglement. We know that.
So victim, perpetrator. Originating incidences include things like someone was harmed in a physical way, murdered, raped, exposure, sexual abuse, domestic violence, victim of a crime, right? Even institutionalized or imprisoned. Those are some signs and symptoms to look for with originating incidences. Now, here's the thing about the victim-perpetrator entanglement. You can get entangled with the victim, or you can get entangled with the perpetrator. Sometimes you get entangled with both, but sometimes you're just one and sometimes you're just the other. So if you end up with a victim entanglement, start to look in your life and look to see, did you end up getting bullied in school? Did you end up having some abuse in the home? Was there incest, molestation, or rape? Car accidents, being the victim of crimes, lawsuits? Do you end up getting kind of attacked by people, verbally, emotionally, physically? Do you end up in relationships that are emotionally, mentally, or physically abusive? Sometimes you'll see that with the victim entanglement, you'll find that people have low self-esteem, depression, bipolar, or borderline personality disorder, or some of the personality disorders can go with the victim entanglement. Also, autoimmune. Autoimmune disorders are often wrapped up in victim-perpetrator entanglements. I worked with a woman who they couldn't diagnose her actually. They think it was lupus, but her body was in immense pain. It was something autoimmune. And she was on all these painkillers. And the doctors couldn't figure out what it was. And she was pumped with so many painkillers, and it still hurt. Now, when science ceases to work, you can bet there's an entanglement at play. I will tell you that, well, we haven't gotten to pull towards death yet, which is one that I had, but I was traveling. That's probably maybe where I ended up getting the Lyme disease. And whatever was going on for me, can I just get really up close and personal for a minute? Can I share something that's really kind of intimate, even though it might be kind of gross? Is that okay? Okay. When I was traveling, I had diarrhea for 2 years straight, and I gained weight. Science is no longer working. Newtonian reality is off the hook. What's going on here? Entanglement was at play. So this woman, same thing. She was on all these heavy, heavy pain meds, didn't touch it. Entanglement was at play. When I looked in her family tree, one side of the family was Irish, the other side was English. For those of you that know, the potato famine, the English starved the Irish out of their own country. The Irish then took ships to America to try to find food and a place to live. And what happened was those ships were called coffin ships, because when they arrived on the East Coast, they were just full of dead people. And she actually knew that one of her great relatives, a couple of them were in that boat that came to America. So when we did her work and disentangled her from trying to resolve this victim perpetrator, because she had English blood and Irish blood in her body, that causes autoimmune disorder. The fight is inside. Do you see? So when we disentangled her from that, in the middle of the session, her pain lifted. And after the session, it did not come back. Go figure. I don't know. This stuff is pretty trippy to me. It weirds me out, but I kind of don't care how weird something is, so long as it works. If you tell me I gotta jump backwards in a circle 10 times every day and it's gonna make my business go better or my health get better, I'm gonna do it. I don't care how ridiculous it is. This stuff is trippy. I don't care. It's done so much for me and everyone I've worked with. I'm a huge fan. Ultra concentrated type of bleach. All right. So perpetrator entanglement. You can end up getting entangled with a perpetrator. You end up having perpetrator energy, and sometimes you don't even know it, but you might notice that you have a short temper, that it's easy for you to get agitated, frustrated, annoyed, angry, that you lose your temper, right? So those are just some examples, some quick, very easy examples of what might happen if you're entangled with a perpetrator. There's others. You'll be able to read this and kind of get deeper into it. One of the main ones I want to get to tonight is pull towards death. Is Sita in the room? Ah, fantastic. And is Andy here? Oh, unusual, okay. So I told Sid that we were going to work on Pull Towards Death tonight because it is one of the, it's a popular one. It's the one I had that caused all the Lyme and the health issues. And a decent amount of people are entangled with it because we have so much history of war and genocide in our past. Now the Pull Towards Death entanglement is kind of a heavy one to have because it affects every of those 5 areas. It affects your money, it affects your business and your career, it affects your relationships, your health, and your happiness, your mood. And things that you can look for Pull Towards Death in your family tree are things like, did anybody in your family die young under the age of 25 in the last 7 generations? Keep in mind that just because you have an originating incident doesn't mean that you are entangled with it. Okay, I just want you to make sure that you're not like, oh my God, I have 50 of these. It doesn't mean that you're entangled with it. You gotta look in your own life and see, am I struggling with money or am I struggling with relationships or health? Parents who die with children under the age of 15. This is where the stillborn, miscarriage, or abortion comes into play. That's Pull Towards Death stuff. And sometimes those are the originating incidences, and other times those are part of the entanglement. So sometimes people say to me, oh my gosh, I had an abortion, I had no idea. I've kind of been upset with myself and really kind of carrying a lot of shame or pain around it. But now that I see that my mom had a miscarriage and my grandma had a stillborn, I see how it's all aligned. It was just the entanglement going down the family tree. Things like the genocide, right? Colonization, all the England and the Spain and all the people that went around and colonized, that's perpetrator stuff, Pull Towards Death stuff. Killed someone, murder. This is the one where murder comes into play. And signs and symptoms in your own life are things like a dim life. Are you just experiencing a little, it's just like the lights aren't quite all the way on so bright, right? It's just, my money's, my relationships, This is the one where I end up seeing people with health issues, depression, slow suicide, which is alcoholism or drug abuse. Those are versions of slow suicide. So if you find somebody in your family is kind of having trouble letting go of alcoholism or drugs, it can often be because of the Pull Towards Death entanglement. Mental health issues, fear of heights actually can come from the Pull Towards Death entanglement. Dark imaginings. So I had these thoughts. I thought everybody had these thoughts, and there's people that don't have these thoughts. And I've said this in weekend events before. People have gone, "Wait, everyone has that thought, right?" And then the other part of them was like, "No, I've never had that. Are you crazy?" And here's one of the examples of those thoughts. Are you ever driving on the freeway or on a windy road, and you just think for a second, "What if I turn the wheel? What would that be? What if I just get the thought to turn the wheel?" How many of you have ever had that thought? Just the curiosity of turning the wheel. I definitely have. There are people who don't have this thought. And they think, they're like, whoa, you think, what? What do you think? And the rest of us are like, yeah, of course we do. What are you talking about? Everybody thinks that. No, we don't. Suicidality, suicidal thoughts. I've worked with people who are like so much in pain with the suicide. Why am I suicidal? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And then they find out it's a Pull Towards Death. And it's huge in their family system. And they realize, oh my God, it's not me. Because I was feeling so weird about myself for having suicidal thoughts. Suicidal ideation, suicidal attempts. I've worked with people with suicidal attempts, multiple attempts. And it's that drive is the Pull Towards Death drive. Emotional pain and frustration, sadness, depression, that kind of stuff. Oh, interesting. Liking horror films. People who Pull Towards Death can have attraction to things like horror films, things with lots of drama and bad things happening in movies, and extreme sports. Because it's just getting close to that Pull Towards Death. There's some other ones in here that I'm going to skip. Splitting patterns, murder, exclusion, ignored, and forgotten patterns. That one's, I'll just quickly say that if anybody in your family was excluded, forgotten, not discussed, brushed under the rug, nobody talks about crazy Uncle Joe, nobody talks about that extra child that Uncle Joe had with that one woman, that child that came from that affair, like any of those family secrets, any of the things that are forgotten and not talked about, they come back to haunt us. Because our subconscious feels the pain, feels this like missing member of the family. And one of the things that happens is some people always have this searching. People say, I just feel like I'm looking for something all the time, and I just can't find it. I don't know what it is, but I'm like, I'm searching, I'm looking. It's often because there's a missing family member, somebody who's been excluded, forgotten, denied, kicked out of the family, or walked out of the family. So kicked out is when they're disowned. And, well, walked out is when they disown the rest of the family. That's it. Out of here.
Those would be abandonment issues, right?
They can be, yes. They can be. I wouldn't say exclusively, and they can be. All right, we're doing good.
How does that manifest though? Like if
The-
your father left or your mother left and abandoned you?
That's a little different. That's a childhood imprint.
Okay.
Yeah, that happened in you, to you as, when you were
Yes.
alive. It's not somebody else that's doing that. And so then you have people who have had that experience can often pick up the childhood imprint of people won't stay. You can't trust people to stay. People won't be loyal. People won't stay with you. People, whatever it may be. And I've seen people who have that who end up finding partners who die on them, right? And they're like, man, like I've had people say, I've married 3 husbands, they all died. Everyone I marry dies. I'm afraid to marry the next guy because I'm afraid he's going to die. And it's the pull towards death. And it's partly the pull towards death. It can partly be the exclusion, ignored, forgotten. It can be the splitting. There's a few different ones that play into that. And it can be the childhood imprint of abandonment, feelings of abandonment. So, good.